Okay. On the meeting of the Solid Waste Board, at 9 o'clock. Order of business is approve the agenda. Oh, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Public comments on any agenda items? Comments? Is this the point where Pat always says, boy, we're moving right along?
Yeah. They skip the next one.
Okay. Communication shared by solid waste board members. Yeah. Okay. Approval of the minutes, open session from September 20th.
Almost.
Second. Motion made and seconded. Any additions, corrections? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Discussion, Snell Road landfill groundwater investigation.
Number 6. Budget.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're really moving.
I
along.
tried. Trying to save half an hour off.
Just an insignificant item.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
I apologize. Item number 6, Solid Waste Management Board Executive Budget Update.
All right, I just want to start by thanking this board. I think the budget that you guys proposed was pretty solid. I really appreciated the idea of a separate tipping or tolling fee, tipping fee for out of county things. I think one of the things that we saw in the past why we raised that is we were so much lower than when Outagamie and Brown, that when there was a hailstorm, they would truck all their shingles down here, and then we would have to turn around and truck them right back up. So I think that really addresses that, and I think that was a really great move. And we do have to be realistic with our tipping fees, so I do appreciate you guys bringing that up a little bit, especially because gas sales are no longer what they are. And we have other things that we have to make sure that we're keeping our balances up there for the day that we ever have to build a new landfill. So that was really good. The other proposed changes to the TO, I think the team really thought that up well. And I really like the adaptation of taking the 2 positions to admin 4, because I think they both kind of do admin 4 work. And then having another position that kind of is almost like a training piece for that. So me and John talked a lot about in the county, how do we have career paths? Where we have growth, so it's not all horizontal, where people can go, whether it's in this department or in another department, and we need to make sure that we tie those paths together. So I think those changes really adhere to that philosophy. So that was, I was really pleased to see that. The other ad that we did is we did the sponsorship for the herd again for a Go Green Night. There are other things that John and his team are working on how we make Winnebago County a premier recycler. So how does our organization do a better job of making sure that we're putting things where we have to go? John was the one that explained to me that pizza boxes are now recyclable. For 20 years of my life, I thought differently. But right, so they do a really good job in that, and I think that's a good way for us to get some outreach and get out in the community and kind of tie a lot of these things that really work together and that are environmental. The other change that I made is I did remove the environmental specialist position from the budget because it has been hired for a while. Not because I don't support it, because I want to give John time to think about what that position needs to be. Is it 1 position? Is it 2 positions? Is it a combined position between counties? And when it's time for him to really think of what that spot should be, I want him to have a blank slate. And I think when he finally comes up to what that position should be to help, because John's been carrying that load, but we can't expect John to carry that load forever. So when he decides what that position, should look like, I don't think that this board, would not be supportive of that or the board in general. So I wanted him, to simply have a clean slate. I'm not a fan of placeholder positions, just because. So if you're gonna recreate it, rethink it, start from scratch without going to a budget with a TO spot, and some dollars on there that, may or may not be true. So those are the big changes, that we really, made on that. I do applaud you, for the budget you guys put forward. I think it was well thought out. And John, I compliment you and your team. We asked everybody to give us reasonable, budgets, and I think you hit that mark.
Thank you.
So, John, just so I understand that position, it's gonna remain in the organizational chart, but it's just not funded?
It is not.
It's off.
It's off the organizational chart?
Yep,
Okay,
correct.
Yeah, so, yeah, like John had mentioned, once we get a clear path of, how we're gonna continue to operate with gas and energy, how we're gonna continue to operate with Snell Road, which I'll touch more on agenda item 7 here. Then we can, again, find the TO, what we would want. And then just go through the normal process of getting John's backing, getting HR's backing, taking it to P&F committee, and then the county board to change our table outside the budget.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, let's talk about that real quick. My recollection was that seemed to be a pretty arduous task in the past, which is why I think people, if you got something in the table organization, you really hesitate to support getting rid of it because it's so difficult to reinvent that. Is that a little cleaner process now, or?
Yeah, I would say there's a lot more trust now. For a long time, when I first got here, people would kind of tuck away money in their budget because they're afraid to go to the board and ask for more. Well, that's the purpose of the board. That's your role to say, yes, we agree with this, or yes, we don't. It's the county board's role to say, yes, we agree with this, or yes, we don't. So instead of putting that position off to the side, I've been encouraging, departments to really have trust in the board, trust in their committees to be able to do that. So I think that process is a lot easier, now than it was, maybe 10, 15 years ago. 10, 15 years ago, if you'd have asked me if we'd have had a unanimous vote for wage reslotting, I'd have said no way. But that happened this year. So I think that, trust back and forth has been growing.
Okay.
And I would echo that same thing. I think in the past, it's always tough to go outside the budget route to make changes in your table organization, unless some, catastrophic thing happened within the department. But now I think the path is a little cleaner, a little easier to work through.
All right, so
Now, the one thing, you mentioned the bird deal, have we filled the media specialist position, or is that position still available, but we need to hire somebody for it?
The latter part of what you said, it's been posted, we got interviews next week, so.
Okay,
So we hope to have someone hired before the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
good.
That would be the lead person on that
Right.
event.
Yeah, because without that person, we might be spending a lot of money and not getting everything out of it that we can get out of it.
Right. Yep.
Anything else, John?
Any questions for me? Questions
Your
for John?
job.
Yeah.
Appreciate your coming to the meeting and
Absolutely.
showing up and so forth. Did the budget negotiations work a little better this year? I know there was concern about the chairman not.
Yep.
Not muddying up the water, for lack of a better term. And
No, I think it did, and that's how budget process should work. And it's not about transparency for me, it's about honesty with my department heads. I want us to be able to talk about things that may or may not happen. talk about challenges that they may see but aren't comfortable bringing to the light. I wanna have that open, honest, conversation with them. Not that, not all of them are comfortable doing that with their chairman of the room. And you don't want to separate just those relationships, so it's either all or nothing. So that's why we went with this, and it's the same thing, I would never ask to be part of the, well, I would ask to be part of the amendment process, but I understand why it can't. Right, so when the budget finally gets handed over to the county board, it is now your responsibility to do what you want, and I have no authority there. So it was more for us holistically, looking at some of these challenges that we have countywide and understanding how we work as a team. And I think, even the herd, event is a good example of that. Cause solid waste worked with land and water, and we also, I believe the benefactor of the Jersey sales was Fox Wolf Water. Right, so it was, we used that, to have two departments and organization, regional organization will all work together and kind of benefit. And those are kind of the conversations we're having. I mean, there's gonna come a time, where we are gonna have to make some hard decisions. And we need to figure out how we can get as effective and as efficient as possible and collaborate the best that we can. How do we share equipment? How do we share people? How do we cover each other when we're in shortfalls? And I think those conversations are developing nicely, and I think we are developing a pretty good plan. We've got some challenges coming.
Why do you say that, executive? Why would you say that? We have challenges coming.
I mean, we have challenges coming. The costs are going up. And the costs are going up across the board. I would assume it's much like my restaurant. My utilities are up almost 30%.
Right.
How do you eat that? UWO, when I was talking to Chancellor Vitt, their natural gas cost alone was up $1.2 million. That was 1.2 million of their $18 million shortfall was attributed to just the natural gas prices to heat all the buildings. So we're gonna face all of these. We need to be competitive in the labor market, otherwise we're not gonna have anybody to do what we have to. So those are challenges that are coming. Bonding, we bond $10 million a year, right? And of that 10 million, 5 million of that is usually county roads, county road projects. $5 million of road projects does not get you the same amount of miles of road it did 5 years ago. So that is either gonna have to come up and other things that have to come down. We have to figure out a way to make it work. So that's just the simple realities that we're gonna be facing. And we can only grow by net new construction. Our shared revenue was roughly 1.8 million this year, but that will only grow. We won't get another $1.8 million jump next year. And only grow with what sales tax does, and I appreciate the sharedness of it. But I mean, these are the challenges we're facing. This is why when we look at a position, John, really think about it. How's it going to work for us? Is it something that we can share between counties? Is it something that we can share between departments? What is it? What best suits our needs going forward?
Yeah, and with the changes made in the budget document, we end up with a net deficit of 541,550, so a little reduced deficit based on the changes in the labor amount. So,
Do you have the deficit number from this year?
it's kind of
Projected.
As bad as we got.
no,
Right.
it's a little better. Let's see here.
And now while you're looking at it, I think that's a really good point. Budgets aren't necessarily actuals, and that's the thing we have to remember. When we budget a vacant position, we have to budget for the full salary of the position, and we also have to budget for a family plan. We have to budget the maximum amount of benefits for that person. That's just the way we do things. So just because this is what the budget is, doesn't mean that's the monies we're going to spend. For years, we've budgeted a deficit, a structural deficit, but then turned into surplus.
And I guess because of some of the credits from the Bow side of things, the Tri-County side of things, the landfill audit for 2022 for reconciliation. We ended up getting monies back from the regional operation for 2022. And it's in 2023 projection. So right now, we're projecting $1 million surplus for 2023, even with reduced revenues on the natural gas energy. But I think some of the efficiencies we saw in year one with the new flow agreement running through landfills helped us out. Now, whether that continues moving forward,
John, do you remember if we budgeted flatline last year, or was there a small deficit budgeted last year?
it was rather large.
There was a large deficit and it turned into potentially a surplus.
The adopted budget last year was a deficit of $1.5 million.
Right, and we are projecting to come in,
$1 million to the good.
right, so,
So, and we can provide a service for everybody in Winnebago County. Break even, I think, is a win-win for everybody in the county, so. Yeah, so. Alrighty. Oh, I'm sorry, Paul.
Well, as long as we're airing differences and philosophies, I'd like to take issue with the elimination of inviting the chairs to the budget session. I think it's very important that the chair of a department or of a committee, commission or board, be at that budget session. And the reason for that is that the department heads are at-will employees at pleasure of the county executive. The chairs are typically county board supervisors or citizen members serving in the capacity of leading their respective committees. The chairs have the ability to speak up whatever is on their mind, whatever their particular commission, committee, or board believes, but is in conflict with the administration. I experienced this myself at a time that I had the privilege of serving as the chair of the Emergency Management Committee. I attended a budget session with the department head. The department head had been there for several years, was anticipating retirement within the next couple of years, and had intimated to me that there was a concern or a need for a command post. But the department head was not prepared to share that with the county executive. We were sitting in a budget session, and I brought that subject up right in front of the county executive. I said, it was shared with me that there is this need, and I don't know, within 8 months or maybe 14 months, there was a Highway 41 disaster, a 100 car accident, and our command post was not equipped, was not capable of doing it. However, we were in the process of seeking out and getting a new command post. It wasn't there in time for that emergency need. But it was the chairman of a committee that was in front of the county executive, speaking up what the department had feared to do. And because there's no repercussions. You know, I mean, you can choose to, on this particular, board, you can choose to not reappoint me. But typically there, is nothing that a supervisor has to lose by putting the truth forward. The second direction that I put on the table is in the decisions that are trickling down from the county board departments to the quasi-public solid waste department and board. For the years I've served on this board, and I'm not the senior member, Jerry Conrad and our CPA.
Because I don't have a name tag, I still have.
It's white, it's white, it's.
Showing my age. But anyway, this board has always handled all those issues, and it was never an issue in front of the county board. The corporation councils presentations to the board, and the I guess I even was the person that said we ought to be on the organization chart that give us more exposure. And I also had got us into the appendix of the budget, because we were never in the budget back in 2006. But nonetheless, I'm seeing the independence eroded, and in as much as we are not dipping into the public trough of the levee, I don't see any reason why the solid waste department couldn't continue with having a environmental specialist. We had, I thought that the gal that we had was really first class. I am not a social media buff, so I didn't follow all of those publications that she shared with the public. But I think that it did add a dimension to our publicity and our public image. So I think that, you know,
Oh, not
These are a couple
to
of-
interrupt, that position's intact, that was not touched. Just so you know.
It was the environmental manager, which was
Right,
last held by Zach Morrow.
okay,
And
Gas
Insurance.
energy, gas energy and long-term care programs, air permit, and all that stuff.
The media specialist is still intact, and
Yes.
they're going to be
Interviewing next week.
interviewing next week.
oh,
Yeah, so.
okay. Nonetheless, I suppose I I shared my tribal wisdom. And
Your 2 minutes are up.
Chairman, if you don't mind, I appreciate your thoughts. For the record, a few chairmen were in the rooms and none were asked to leave. Pat was one of us, was allowed to stay in, Mary Beth and a couple got mixed up in the memo. That's number one. Number two, if I have a department head, that we don't have open, honest communication and I'm willing to tell them what their needs are, we need to find a new department head. That's the boss's job to make sure that they have open, honest communication. Me and John have disagreed plenty in the past, but we've always had an open, honest relationship to call each other out when we do that. And I think I don't think I'm afraid to come to John with anything. I don't think John's afraid to come with me for anything. Well, hopefully I'm not speaking out of bounds on that. Department heads are for the most part, have the free will to say what they want from me, and they know they're not gonna be judged by it. I wanna hear all ideas, good, bad, ugly. So that's more of a leadership thing. Secondly, again, it's the process. I don't think I should have a role in the amendment process. I think after the budget is presented, I need to step out. I'm not part of that process anymore. And I'll always respect that. That is up to the board to debate that. And I don't get input unless last year there was input only on a position that was directly in my office. It was the only reason I was able to come up and speak, and I didn't ask for special permission to do that. Otherwise it's director administration would have had that argument. So I understand what your thoughts are. I understand what you're saying, and I can understand if department heads actually felt that way, that they would at least have they would have that relationship with their board chair to be able to go and defend that. And I think that exists. And I've got 5 daughters, Paul, my feelings don't get hurt. You can say what you want to me, and I'm gonna try to look at it objectively and try to figure out what the message is. So I do appreciate that you disagree with my process this year. I'm not committing that that's gonna be the process going forward. But I did see some pros and some cons of that this year. I appreciate your input.
well, it's not so often that you get a forum like this to be able to exchange these ideas.
Right.
And I think it's a healthy input that's taken from one of these.
Right.
Inside.
Okay, any other discussion? Item 8, was to be discussed, the gentleman from the USDA is not here.
Wait, hold on,
I'm sorry.
we skipped 7.
Moving along.
You called it. You called it early.
That's a high pressure position right there.
Pat's watching to see if it's hard for him to get replaced.
Just move to item 12.
Already 10 minutes past what I said we were gonna be done. Okay, I'm sorry.
Number 7.
You have the floor, John, number 7.
Okay, I guess I just wanted to give the board a little brief update on the status of the Snell Road landfill groundwater investigation. You know, this issue has been ongoing at the Snell Road site for many years. And I guess since the 2016 drawdown event, subsequently shutting off the horizontal groundwater extraction system, obviously the DNR is maybe scrutinizing contamination on site a little more than they had in the past. And with some somewhat recent changes within the DNR, the upper level management, there's been a change in how contaminated sites kind of migrate between, say, the solid waste portion of the DNR and what they call the R&R, or the remediation and redevelopment portion of the DNR. And with those changes, our site became kind of moved up the food chain, kind of moved up the ranks of a site being considered to be moved from solid waste to R&R for the VOC contamination that's on site. So we recently, found out about the details of this in August. Had a meeting with DNR staff, solid waste staff, and R&R staff to discuss kind of the changes or the impacts to the site. Had a follow-up meeting in September. And I guess the first step in the process is the DNR will be issuing us what they call a responsible parties letter. We were able to, have some good dialogue with the R&R people, the R&R project manager assigned to the site. We were provided with a draft copy of the letter. I don't know if you can just pull that up, share it. Yeah, so, we were provided with this draft, the end of September. We provided comments to, DNR, last Friday. And we're still waiting to hear feedback from DNR. Now, the highlighted sections are specific to our site and some of the subsequent meetings that we've had. The remaining sections are more kind of a canned RP document from NR 700 code. But essentially what this is gonna do, once this letter is issued final, it's gonna set kind of a timeline of events that we need to follow. Let's say more closely than what solid waste has been allowing to happen. I think solid waste staffing, shortages, other issues have allowed this site to kind of be off the radar a little bit with the changes in the DNR. They probably should have made this decision to move this site to R&R many years ago, because of low-level vinyl chloride contamination in some wells near the property line. So I don't know if you can, both then myself and Marcus Glazer, environmental technician, reviewed this draft letter, both put our comments in electronic form. So, I mean, essentially, you have 30 days to hire a consultant, you have so many days to prepare a response letter, you gotta potentially prepare a work plan, and it's a site investigation. And so the biggest thing is we were asking about allowing us maybe a little more time. And the DNR seemed to be, at least in the meetings we had, seemed to be flexible with maybe the timelines. If we have, both under a professional services agreement, and we can have them do extra work for us through, specific task orders and whatnot. But if we need to go out and install, let's say, a new well nest or new wellness, we have to put together a, formalized bidding document and then put it out on Demand Star and solicit bids and proposals from different drilling contractors, and then typically time it to bring it back to the board to approve, something that's not in our budget. So it's a longer process than maybe a private landfill or a private brownfield site where there hasn't been any activity. I mean, we've got years and years and years of data about this site and the low-level VOCs that are essentially leaking out of the online section of the landfills. So, but this is gonna change how this site is approached, and it's gonna require more focus from both. It's gonna require more focus from me, and it's also gonna require more focus from our two environmental technicians to make sure we're all, all in and meeting these timelines that are gonna be laid out in the letter. And in this the one concern that I had when this was first brought up is this, how is, you know, is it related at all to, let's say, the drawdown? And it is not. It has more to do with trying to better define the source of the contamination in the unlined section of the study. It just so happened, it kind of synced up with the drawdown event discussions but that wasn't like any kind of trigger point, and there's really nothing of substance in this RP letter that, you know, directly is a result of the drawdown event. They're looking at having us investigate, you know, not out off the property limits. They're having us investigate areas in here. This is the unlined portion of the site, the oldest part of the site. That's where they're focusing their investigation efforts at. So we are gonna be able to use a combination of data we've already submitted to DNR, the solid waste portion, perhaps adding a little more detail to some of those reports, whether it be, you know, a bedrock elevation map, additional cross sections through some of the wells that are on site to better define how the bedrock elevations change at the site. But we're gonna be able to reuse a lot of the data that's already been submitted, but there is gonna be more work that we're gonna have to dig through files. Maybe make some calls to companies that brought waste to our site, whether it be paper mills or other industrial customers, to try and determine, you know, what sort of processes that they went through, potentially what kind of chemicals were disposed of. You know, it was all legal at the time. And then we're probably gonna have to do a little more investigation work around, you know, the old part of the site. Whether it be taking VOC samples in some of the wells that for our solid waste monitoring plan that haven't been required to be monitored. Maybe we're gonna have to do some additional sampling for a period of time to better define where, you know, where the source of the VOCs is emanating from. So, but again, we're talking, you know, low level VOCs is mostly vinyl chloride is the one that's kind of tripping things, but yeah, so hopefully in the coming weeks here, we'll be seeing the final version of this RP letter, and then that will set the clock in motion, and we're gonna have to start, you know, getting these timelines of the different reports and whatnot, providing the DNR with you know, timely updates. And you know, the R&R section, they have adequate staff. We'll be working together kind of as we go through the process. You know, they'll be, you know, trying to help us and to meet some of these deadlines to get the site to a point where we can, you know, get it taken off R&R and brought back to solid.
Can you tell us what R&R is?
It's remediation and redevelopment. That's the section of the DNR that's referred to as R&R.
I get it without standing on top of the hill and realizing what a Herculean task. Is there such a thing as ever digging that up and sending it to Outagamie to a lined facility and being done with it? I don't know what that would cost or entail.
Yeah, that's probably something we're gonna look at, is, you know, removing that waste from A1 and either relocating it, kind of like we did with, the old A2 section back in the mid-90s. That was kind of the focus of the DNR then, that was the source, and so we dug out all this waste, kind of moved it up to the north end of, cell B, into an area where there was a better liner system, a leachate collection system. That will be one thing we'll be looking at, so.
Well,
Yeah, I'd just like to comment that it's a real credit to the solid waste department administration and management, as well as the prudent decisions that they've steered the boards to in the past, that makes this a real minor, although it's could be a major flaw. It's a real minor thing, because you got the money in the bank, pay for those extra expenses, for the closure of that landfill, in the retained earnings, that have accumulated for this type of, unforeseen event.
Very good point, Paul.
Kudos to you.
Not just me.
What's your name again?
Pat O'Brien. Couple of things. First of all, did I miss something? I know I missed a meeting with regard to the settlement that was still going through the county board. Did that get finalized or where? It did? Okay, it's been voted on, everything's done? Okay, I didn't see anything in the minute.
What we're waiting for, just to cross all the Ts and dot all the Is, is for this RP letter to be issued final, just to make sure it doesn't include something, and then we'll move forward with the rest of the paperwork.
Okay, so and then secondly, this is really not a surprise, right? I mean, you thought that at some point there was gonna be another.
Yeah, it's not really a surprise, just the timing of it is kind of frustrating, but.
Then my third question is, what if from the DNR's perspective, what is it exactly that they hope to accomplish? Once they do that, make us the responsible party and all of that, what more do they want? What does that do to further the goal of it not spreading, which is really the goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what your investigation going back to whenever, what does that do to further that goal? I'm a little confused by that.
Well, I guess we're gonna be working with them to kind of come up with that ultimate goal. Back before we put in the horizontal groundwater extraction system, and probably only a few of you remember this, maybe just Jerry. Is the DNR wanted us to put a cap over, like a synthetic cap over a large portion of the site. And it was very cost prohibitive at the time. And the solid waste board tried to be a little more forward thinking and creative and come up with a plan to install this horizontal groundwater treatment system to, I guess, minimize contaminant movement through the site and off-site. It might involve, source removal, like we were talking about, eliminating the A1 area and moving it to a lined landfill or a different part of the site. It might involve, additional gas and leachate well installations where there's more leachate removal from that area of the site, because right now it's unlined and there's no leachate collection system. So it might involve rethinking a different sort of pumping and treating groundwater system. Not operating the full 4-well horizontal system. It might involve only operating one of the wells. It might involve installing new wells, maybe in a little different area. But that's gonna be something that we're gonna have to kind of work through with the DNR. But ultimately, they wanna try and make sure that, there's no, I guess, smoking gun or channel where the OCs are, working their way through the site and off-site in maybe a different way. They're fine with an option to continue shutting off and decommissioning the horizontal groundwater extraction system, but that's something that's still in play. But they're really focusing on the source and kind of a better remediation method to the source of the contamination. I don't know that it fully
Well,
answers your
I'm just
question.
trying
because
to,
it-
at some point, the source is there. So they think if they can identify the source of the contamination way back when, that somehow that will help determine how to mitigate that.
Right, yep. Way back when, and even, where, it's kind of. It's interesting, I mean, this is like going back to like real engineering work. It's interesting to me, but, trying to figure out where, what part of that. A1 cell is where. These contaminants that are causing VOC hits in the wells, where is it leaking from? Where is it coming from? Is it coming from A1 likely? Is it coming from a different area? Is there? The old shops, was there a tank at some point in time that had cleaning solvents in them that, nobody really knows about? This site has been active for many years prior to the solid waste board taking over its operation, and it was kind of interesting. Jerry Bougie and his GIS people provided me with some old historical aerial photos of the site, and it's really interesting to see how the site has progressed in its development over the years. So, that'll be all the first step, all things going back in time and trying to figure out, was there some industrial customer that brought in,
Then my final question is. Are we gonna need to amend the budget for this? Are we gonna start planning to spend money? I mean, I know we got Chris Anderson. A lot of this is your work and staff work, but where does that?
we're gonna end up having to probably amend the budget to some extent, for 2024. On the, architect engineering, the 55019. We plan for some additional expenses associated with that, but we may need to come back to the board at some point in time to add a little bit more cover things. Once we have a clear picture of, where the work plan and remediation efforts are going.
Okay, and I promise my final question. The settlement money, that's not a part of any of our budget at this point in terms of the 20, how much is that again? You can't speak yet?
Can't speak yet because we haven't signed the deal. We wanna wait for this, but I can tell you that money was well spent in the process of getting there. It won't be enough to. It's not the answer.
We're reimbursing ourselves for past stuff as opposed to using this money for. I see, but no, I understand, that's the point, is to put it in retained earnings and away we go.
Yep.
All right.
Any other questions, discussion? I think I'm ready to go to number 8, and we're gonna pass on number 8, but as long as it's on the agenda, at least give that some thought. I'm sure everybody's got opinions one way or the other, and we'll bring that up at next meeting. Director's report on department operations.
Okay. Well, it's a summary. So, going down to number 9 here. So gas to energy operations continue. Fortunately, the weather has still allowed us to, try and operate 2 to 3 engines during peak hours during the day and then shutting down an engine overnight. As temperatures continue to drop in the fall and get into the winter, that probably won't be an option for us, but what we're trying to do is just maximize the on-peak revenue as best we can and allow the landfill to recover as it needs to, but you will see periodic flare operation. I guess our one mechanic needs vacation, needs to use vacation, so the way our systems are set up, when he's got a planned vacation, we just turn the flare on and then he doesn't have to worry about anything until he comes back. So,
And just, the flare basically is just burning off the excess that has to go.
yeah,
We can't put it in the tank and save it.
no, we can't.
Okay,
Yeah, so, you know, we're running somewhere, like, today we're at about 550 CFM, we're running one small engine, one big engine. When those are shut down and we run the flare, they usually set the vacuum, and then the flare runs at about between 500 and 600 CFM, which is about, you know, the normal amount of gas that the site is giving up at this point in time. So we had a pretty decent month in September, 62,825 in WPS revenues between the sites. So the year-to-date total through September is 555,721. We had only budgeted 400, so we've exceeded that, and that's really a result of a little higher rates from WPS than we had originally planned. I think our operational plan we put in place, we did a lot of maintenance on engines late last year to have them ready to run well in 2023. We're doing stack testing for formaldehyde today and tomorrow on engines 3 and 4. That's one of the provisions of our air permit. So that is taking place at Snow Road first, engine 3, and then they're moving their testing to the backside of the law enforcement center for engine 4.
and John, at one time, we couldn't add a 6th engine because we'd be emitting too much formaldehyde. Now that we're down to 4, a lot of times 1 or 2 engines, does that make it way easier to pass the test?
Yes, yeah, it's just a compliance item with the air permit. Yeah, we shouldn't be anywhere close to the limits that are followed. And then, the 2 RFPs that, the board, reviewed, and authorized back at the September meeting, for, equipment upgrades at the Sunnyview site here for downsizing the flare and compressor and treatment equipment. Those awards were issued via Demand Star to Perennial Energy on October 2nd. We put together purchase of service agreement documents for both those RFPs. Those have been submitted to Perennial. We should be getting final signatures from them on both those documents this week. I know Cassie put together a and we have to set up an account with Perennial Energy for the invoicing process of the project. So Cassie's got something I need to look at and sign today, but we're getting close to getting those documents signed. There's purchase orders that have been prepared, so the timeline of events will start with those 2 projects. So we're glad we're moving forward with that. One other item that has come up in recent months is the transfer station, the MSW concrete floor. A section of the floor, the north half of the MSW portion of the transfer station was replaced in 2016. And we had a few areas where there was some rebar starting to be exposed. So when our loaders are scraping the floor with their metal edge buckets, they end up, the floor ends up wearing. So we did a little repair project with the contractor back in 2021, but we're finding like wholesale areas where the concrete is just wearing, and now more and more rebar is exposed. So it's, unfortunately, we don't have anything budgeted for this per se, but we're gonna need to do a repair, replace a section of the concrete floor this fall. That is our goal. We're working on an RFP with purchasing, or RFB this will be, we hope to get it out on the street by week's end here. And then have bids due, in a timeline where they can be brought to the solid waste board for approval on November 15th. So we'll have to look at the, dollar amounts, and then we're probably gonna have to do some budget adjustments, for that at that time. But the goal is to try to, you know, the slow time of the transfer station is fall in January, February. March, we all know the weight limits come on, we have to completely avoid that time frame. Rather not do it in January and February because of the temperatures and the additional efforts that are necessary to make sure the concrete is cured properly. So we've put together a time frame of trying to do it in the first 2 weeks of December. So before December 15th, this project will be done. They do it in 2 phases. We're gonna have to shut down one compactor and just work on half the building while they pour section. Make sure the cylinder brakes are gonna be good, then we flip flop over and do the other section. So we've done this the last two times we've done floor replacements, so I think our team's got a good plan in place to address this. And usually in once we get past Thanksgiving, things slow down in December as far as input, so. Yeah, I'll go ahead.
I can, and I'm on, I get it, we've got big equipment, big trucks and all that sort of stuff. Concrete's kind of supposed to last forever. I mean, they pour concrete on the highway and they run semis on it all day long. Is it the equipment that, or when should it have been thicker, or the rebar buried deeper back when? And if we're gonna do this, are we gonna be doing this again in 4 years when the rebar's sticking out again?
Well, I guess one of the problems that we run into with this facility is it wasn't ever designed to be a transfer station. What we've had to do is thicken the concrete, reinforced concrete floors in that facility. But one of the things we're gonna look at this time around is a concrete surface hardener to try to stretch out the replacement time frame. The last time around in 2021, when we replaced the south half, I'm not exactly sure what happened. I don't know if it was the time of year we were doing it in February, but contractors were just like, yeah, if we have to do a surface hardener in February, we're not gonna bid on the project. So, but this time around, we are gonna push, make sure that contractors are able to provide quotes for just the basic design and then in addition of a surface hardener in this area of the site. But, you know, the types of materials that come through the facility, you know, it's not necessarily the weight of the vehicles and the loaders, it's more the metal on the concrete. It just slowly
Eats it up.
wears it away, and it's just the nature of the beast. If you look at master planning to create a new transfer station in the future, we will definitely look at a different concrete floor design where you have maybe a thicker overall profile, the reinforcement is deeper in the profile, and you have a specific non-reinforced wear surface where the structural part of the floor will last for, you know, 15, 20 years, and then you just replace that wear surface every 5 to 8 years. So that's something we'll look at in the future, but for right now, we're just gonna go with the same profile and look at a hardener for at least the top part. So, thank you.
And John, would it be cheaper for us to just change the buckets? With the skid on the buckets, so they go not a rubber, but something synthetic, and replace that every 9 months or something like that.
Yeah, we're looking at trying to demo some different cutting edges, some non-metallic cutting edges to try and reduce the amount of wear on that concrete surface. So I know Ryan has contacted a couple of companies, a couple of different brands, and we're gonna try some out to see how they work. You know, it's always nice to be able to really put pressure on that bucket on the concrete floor to get the, you know, get the full load of, you know, to minimize the number of runs you have to make for the compactor hopper, but yeah, it's kind of a trade-off because it definitely does impact the floor life when you have that metal on the concrete. Yep. Yeah, and so the last two items here, we had initially talked about having the Vespine landfill gas beneficial use proposal brought back to this meeting, but time slipped away from us. But I do have a commitment from both that we'll have a good plan in place to provide some of the financial details more clearly to the board, due diligence on Vespine as a company, and bring that back around at the November 15th meeting. So, and John will be down in the staff, will be in the loop on that, and hopefully can be part of that discussion this time around.
Well, we've got a question.
Well, I'd like to take the liberty of sharing the communications that I had transmitted to John and to Pat subsequent to the presentation. I'd like to commend Cassie on the beautiful minutes that she had taken at that meeting.
Beautiful,
That's
that's beautiful to you?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it just spelled out everything that you could go back on the Zoom and witness at the meeting. It spelled out all of the options, all of the benefits, and everything about that's being proposal. My concern in due diligence for the Vespine proposal, and it was mentioned in parentheses in the minutes, is that the use for this electricity is to run a Bitcoin mining operation. And I caution John and Pat that in my opinion, this was a little risky for a municipality like Winnebago County to undertake. And I just put that on the table from some poking I had done with on this team.
As a point of order, this isn't on our agenda, this is more your report, we should maybe save this for November to discuss it.
Well, just a heads
I
up,
appreciate it.
just a heads up.
Before we go too far down the road though.
That issue or researching on the web or whatever you can in respect to this.
Yeah. And as far as the minutes go, that was a challenging meeting in the minutes for, so Cassie did a great job. I just had to make a few little tweaks to them and yeah, so.
I agree, they were beautiful.
Thank you.
It's tough when we get minutes where there's like multiple comments from every board. But anyway, and then the last thing is, I know I'd reported at the last board meeting that we were gonna do weed treatment at the Ken Roble Conservation Park this fall. But the vendor submitted the permit application to the DNR to do it in the fall and they denied it. They are going to approve it for us to do in the spring or early summer. So it'll get delayed. It's about a $2,000, $1,800 to $2,000 service. It'll be done and then solid waste will be invoiced and we'll pay for that. So it won't happen this fall, it'll happen next year.
And the one argument I hear is that, well, there's no fish there. Well, first of all, it's a small pond and it probably didn't take anybody very long to catch every fish out of there. Second of all, if there aren't any weeds, the fish don't have any habitat or way of surviving either. I get ripped on at almost every county board meeting because there's too many weeds, nobody can fish there. Well, you can't have one without the other to some extent. I'm not a big fan of killing off all the weeds either, but I think in the spring that allows the weeds to come back during the summer months, I think is why it was denied.
And I think the game plan is to target certain weed types that are invasive, like the milfoil that's out there.
Yep.
And whatever treatment that they have will leave the good weeds, alone. So I know,
Good
Adam,
weeds is an interesting term also, just, I didn't.
Adam Priest, our parks director, has helped with this. He's kind of been in between with the vendor, because they've actually used this vendor at the county park pond, using the same, treatment plan that was proposed for Ken Robo, and they've had good success. It's lasted for a long period of time and has come out with a good end product, so. That is all I have for number 9.
Don't have anything they wanna question John on? Either John? Okay, future agenda items? Hearing none, set the next meeting date.
So because of budget deliberations that are gonna start on Monday, October 30th, we'll likely run through our normal first Wednesday, November meeting. So we're just gonna skip that one and we'll plan to reconvene on the 15th of November, unless something, comes up and we have to call a special meeting after that week of budget deliberation.
Just so you're aware, the 15th of November is opening day of deer hunting in the UP. So, bad enough the budget hearings are in the peak of the rut. Causes me concern. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Hey,
There's you go.
Good job.
You're in the minutes now, Paul.
You made me